Hello, this is Starlene Hammond with the presentation for the chapter summary of textbook, A Teacher's Pocket Guide to Law. Chapter 1, Control of Public School. After reading the chapter, I feel I was unfamiliar with the rules and regulations that the school board functions from. I learned that the school board for a school district has an implied power to formulate and enforce rules and regulations necessary to operate the school. As a building leader, I know the importance of collaboratively developing and implementing a shared vision and mission with my staff. One way I can communicate this with my staff is to attend school board meetings and act to influence local decisions affecting student learning. Teachers have a leading responsibility to become familiar with district policies, rules, and regulations. Sharing information with my staff will keep them informed and set guidelines for high expectations for student learning and staff behavior. Chapter 2, Instruction and Curriculum Standards. Chapter 2 is informative on curriculum grades, punishment, and teacher quality. I was surprised to read how common a lawsuit based on academic injury is becoming. Although the courts have never sided with such a case, it went on to state it will become more common for parents and students to use this kind of accusation. I like the last line of that topic. Documented remediation are important components of teaching and learning process. As a building leader, I know the job of monitoring instruction is a top priority. Constantly being on the lookout for changing trends in education will help me as a leader to assess, analyze, and anticipate needs for students. Teaching and reteaching concepts to students is important for learning. As a leader, it is important to make sure that the teacher has the tools needed to reteach information or to incorporate intervention for a student's learning. Monitoring progress will be beneficial to the student and the teacher. Chapter 3, Religion in Public Schools. After reading Chapter 3, I was surprised by the distribution of religious materials. A school may not refuse to distribute literature advertising a program with underlying religious content when it distributed quite similar literature for secular summer programs. It seems we as teachers are always sending something home from one organization or another. As a building leader, I now will be faced with religious issues. Understanding the policies for the district is important, and setting regulations for all staff members will create an understanding, appreciation, and use of the community's diverse cultural, social, and intellectual resources. The law states that no person's First Amendment right may be violated. Keeping up with the law and changes made will make me aware of issues to be addressed in my building. Chapter 4, Students, the Law, and Public Schools. I found Chapter 4 to be very informative on issues that happen every day. I know the cell phones can be such a distraction in the classroom. I was surprised that the school is allowed to make exceptions if they have a no cell phone policy. Exceptions given to students with severe medical conditions. I would, and the book states, that this could be a risky ruling by the school, meaning it shows preferences to students. As a building leader, I want to incorporate technology into every classroom so that our students can be ready for the demands of technology in our society. Implementing technology demands that policies are written to protect the student and the school district. As a leader, I know it is important that time in the classroom is focused on learning. I have been part of a great district that implements technology and is very successful. I hope to help implement those strategies into my own building. Chapter 5, Due Process and Student Safety. After reading Chapter 5, I have a better understanding of zero tolerance policy. I thought it was rarely used because it's so harsh and unfair. The chapter states it can be effective in cases like drugs, weapons, school violence, and threatening the safety of students. I also learned that teachers, parents, community leaders, and student representatives should be involved when implementing and planning the zero tolerance policy. Student safety is important for student success. When a student feels safe, they are free to learn and the teacher is free to teach. Relationships with parents and caregivers will give some insight to the type of environment the building will have. A way to promote success with students is to have policies and procedures set that do not violate individual rights but maintains a safe and secure learning environment. Open communication about misconduct will help with documenting a disruptive behavior and possibly a dangerous situation. Chapter 6, Liability and Student Records. When reading this chapter, I was unfamiliar with the good faith privilege. There are times when a teacher has to provide oral or written information about a student's file. Good faith requires that a legitimate purpose be served by communicating the information. As an educational leader, I will do my best to see that student information is kept confidential between staff members and myself. It is important to collect and analyze data and information pertinent to the educational environment. When that occurs, all staff needs to have communication in regards to privacy and consequences of actions. Providing an environment of trust and high expectation means providing a safe and secure learning environment. Chapter 7, Individuals with Disabilities. I was unfamiliar with the aspects of discipline when a student with disabilities is involved. I think it stems off my last class, um, the special education class that I took right before this one. If the behavior is not related to the disability, then all normal discipline procedures take place. It is hard to teach and the students learn when a severely disruptive student is present in the classroom. Creating a personalized and motivating learning environment for each student rests on the building leader's obligations. I realize as a leader it will be my job to communicate a need for providing the least restrictive environment for each student. I will do my best to advocate for children, families, and caregivers. Chapter 8, The Teacher and School Liability. Chapter 5 did touch on mental distress, but I was unfamiliar with how mental distress could be a proven violation or a teacher's liability. Mental distress is deemed liable when damage to a student's self-esteem or it becomes degrading to a student. An educational leader promotes the success of every student by facilitating the development of a vision of learning that is shared and supported by all stakeholders. Supporting the students mentally and academically will be the goal of my building. Developing a staff that can teach to every child will be difficult, but through constant professional development and monitoring by me, every student will be successful in learning. Chapter 9, Discrimination in Employment. I was unfamiliar with the history and pregnancy in the public school employment. I was unaware of districts asking a teacher to leave her teaching duties a certain amount of time before she gave birth. I was unaware that districts dictated when a teacher should return if mid-semester. I, as a mother of two, am very thankful for the protection now given to pregnancy in the school districts. As a building leader, I know I should consider and evaluate the potential moral and legal consequences of my decision making. Monitoring the management and operational systems of the building and staff members is key. In the case of discrimination, I feel my key role will be to stay educated on laws of discrimination and prepare myself for interviews, handling topics of harassment and disputes between staff members. Experience, I was thinking in this case, accounts for a lot. Being ready to handle a situation with discrimination is a lot different than handling it in real life, and I understand experience is going to really teach me how to handle this better. Chapter 10, Teacher Freedom. I was unfamiliar with how the past freedom rights of teachers were stifled in the workplace. I knew that teachers were held in high regard and usually their personal life reflected the high moral standard. Today that's not the case, but I can't say I disagree with the way teachers' personal lives are deemed their own. Being involved in an organization outside the school could result in a demotion or transfer. That's very intimidating. Now, I do believe the rights of first-year teachers are stifled, but not to the point of violating personal rights. As a leader, it is my job to nurture and sustain a culture and instructional program conducive to student learning and staff professional growth. I know that as a leader, I want to be seen as a fair and just person. Personal freedom is sometimes deemed as all a person possesses. Validating a person's worth, rights, and freedom is warranted. Building and sustaining a productive relationship with staff members needs to be based on policies and procedures set forth for the success of students, and concentration on learning and teaching has to be shared and communicated throughout the building. Chapter 11, Tenure, Dismissal, and Collective Negotiations. In Chapter 11, I learned new aspects of collective bargaining. I'm not a tenure teacher, so I'll only concentrate on policies and procedures that would gain tenure in my district. Collective bargaining gives the teachers power to share in negotiations with the school board. The state has stepped in and taken certain things, such as negotiating for health coverage and personal recruitment, away from collective bargaining. And since writing this, I've learned that negotiations are so restricted by either local or state or federal policies. There's very few things teachers can negotiate on when it comes contract time. As a building leader, it is my job to evaluate staff and make decisions about recruiting or dismissing a staff member. In making these decisions, I know documentation has to be recorded, and spending time in the classrooms monitoring, learning, and teaching are important tools to use. The success of each student is the goal of the school district. And, being present in a non-tenure teacher's classroom, I feel, is important. It's something that my district really does. And I feel like tenure is very, very important for teachers. Teachers that have taught for 10 to 20 years soon forgot how incredibly hard your first 3 years in the district are. And so I know that I want to model being present, being helpful, and being there when a teacher needs me, but also acting fair and just, and definitely evaluating and having a good evaluation system. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed the class and learned a ton.